Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Lola and I'm a small illustrator YouTuber from the UK, but today's video is not aimed for anyone who is an illustrator or particularly anyone who has any kind of art background. Today I'm going to teach you how to make these 3 cute handmade card designs that may look impressive, or at least I hope they look impressive, but they are totally accessible for any beginners at arts and crafts to make for your loved ones. These cards are not super specialized to any event or occasion, so some of these you could turn into birthday cards or Valentine's or Mother's Day or Father's Day cards or thank you cards, or the last one could even be particularly suitable for Christmas. It's completely up to you. I'm going to show you how to make them step by step so it's super easy to follow, and if there's one card that you've seen that particularly takes your eye, then just head to the description of this video because I have timestamps, so you can just skip over to the tutorial for the particular card that you want to design. But if you're interested in seeing how I made all 3, then let's get into it. So the first card that we're making is a very colourful one. This could honestly be suitable for absolutely any occasion depending on the colours that you use. This one would be great if you're making a card for someone who's a fan of the Patchwork Elephant or read that as a kid. Let me know if you did and if that was part of your childhood. But anyway, this card is basically meant to almost remind you of like a colourful handmade patchwork quilt. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is get some nice thick cardstock. I wouldn't recommend doing this on thin printer paper as it will likely warp and it will just not look as good quality. So for a list of materials that you will need, please head to the description, and I also have links where you can find any of the materials that I'm using in this video if you're interested and don't have them. So yeah, we're just going to take an A4 piece of some nice white card. We're going to fold it in half. The next thing I started to do was get out my ruler, and I decided that I want a white border around this one, but it's completely up to you. You could go the whole mile and cover the whole front and back with this design if you like. I'm honestly not going to give you any particular measurements for this because it's completely up to you how thick you want that white border to be. And the next thing after that also will depend on the size of the card that you're making, and it will depend on what you want to write in it. So what we're basically going to do is measure out some rough squares. They don't have to be perfect, and honestly, if they're not, it doesn't really matter. I think it adds to the handmade vibe if it's slightly wobbly or uneven. I think it's absolutely fine with a design like this and would only add to it. So I was going to write happy birthday on this card, and I was going to split that up into happy, birth and day. So the maximum number of spaces that I needed for letters on a row of this card was 5, but I also think this card looks best if you have an extra square next to the letters, so I decided to make 6 wide on my card, so 6 squares wide, and that informed how many rows I added. So it really depends how many letters you want to add and the size of your card. That will determine how big you're going to make this square grid. For example, it's going to have to be longer if you're making a card that says something like happy anniversary or something like that. Once you have created a square grid on the card that matches the size of the letters that you want to write, then it's time to start selecting your colours. I was using some acrylic markers for this, which I will link below, but you could use felt tip or paint or coloured pencil, whatever you have to hand and whatever is your medium of choice. So for this I selected a range of colours. I was going for a very colourful version of this card, but if you wanted to make it, for example, red and green for Christmas, or you just wanted to make it red and pink for Valentine's Day, or monochromatic like all different shades of blue for example, it's completely up to you. That will totally change the vibe of the card. I just recommend picking a couple of colours, maybe around 4 distinct colours, and then you want a darker version of each colour. So I'd say keep the main colours fairly light or mid-tone, and then have a darker shade of each colour that you pick, which is what we're going to use to decorate the squares. So here is my selection of colours, if you want to try and just vaguely copy the colours that I selected. So first of all, I wrote my letters down to map out where they would go, and I ignored those squares for now and started working on all of the other squares without letters. So I took each light colour that I had selected and started filling in some of the non-letter boxes randomly. You don't want to have the same colour next to each other, so just try and space it out until you have filled your entire grid with all of your light colours, apart from your boxes where you're going to do the letters, because I think it's just conceptually easier to leave those ones to the end. So once you have coloured each box, now we're going to start decorating the boxes, and this is kind of a trust the process, because at the point where you've coloured the boxes, it's not going to look that great, but once we start decorating them, I promise it will start to look really good. Just stick with it. So basically these illustrations, these little doodles that you're going to do in the squares, they don't have to be perfect, and I think it's great if they're just simple, so you can come up with your own designs. For example, if you were doing a Christmas themed card, you might want to do more things like little stars, little trees, little baubles in these squares. It's completely up to you, and you can copy the designs that I've done if you like. So I was doing some little squares, some little shapes like triangles and circles, I was doing hearts, I was doing little flowers, I was doing zigzags and wavy lines. I'd also just recommend not filling every single box, but do fill most of them with designs. But I want you to leave a couple spread throughout the card blank and just a single colour, because I think that makes it look better with the letters, because for the boxes with the letters, you're just going to have a solid colour background and then a letter on them. So I think it's nicer and looks more cohesive to have a couple solid colour background blank squares dotted around as well. It really adds to the balance of the piece. So once you've added all of the designs and you feel like it's looking good, you want to start colouring in the boxes that you have left for the lettering. And then after I'd coloured those boxes, I just got a black pen and I did my lettering in a very simple font. But I feel like black might actually be too harsh for the colours I selected, and I feel like I probably should have gone with like a dark version of each colour instead. So for example, on the green boxes I could have done a dark green letter, on the blue boxes I could have done a dark blue, and I feel like that would have helped it to slightly blend in better. So maybe that's a little bit of the tip with your lettering, is maybe don't just go for a harsh black. And I'll just say as well, I do think the lettering on this particular card lends itself to quite simple, readable, hand-drawn letters. I wouldn't personally recommend doing any crazy calligraphy on this kind of card. I just don't think that it would fit the vibe. And then the final thing I did was I went in and just cleaned it up a bit. So I added a very thin black border around the edge just to make it look a little bit cleaner. And I also went in with some thin pens to fill in some small white gaps left over, and also draw some borders around the boxes. And then I added little lines on some of the boxes to look like stitches to add to that patchwork quilt effect. And here is the finished card. I hope you like it. This one is the only card I made out of the three that's actually printable in 2D out of the three. So if you do like this design and you can't be bothered to make it yourself, then I've left a link in the description for my Redbubble account. So if you don't know, Redbubble is a print on demand service, and if you want to order this art on a card, print on demand to send to someone for their birthday, then please feel free to download it if you're feeling kind of lazy. But if you're not feeling lazy, I've got a really cool card for you coming up, which is this very sophisticated looking blue card that I made. Again, it doesn't have to be blue, but it includes some 3D elements, so some paper origami flowers, which I think look very effective, but are very easy to make. This one I decided to turn into a Mother's Day card, but I think that this would be suitable for any woman in your life on her birthday, or even an anniversary or Valentine's, for example, or even just a thank you card for someone. So with this one, the first thing that I did was get out some patterned paper. This is really useful to have to create backgrounds for artwork and for cards, so I'd really recommend picking some up if you can. I think I picked this up from Hobbycraft, but you can get this all over. You can get it on Amazon as well. I'll link to where you can find some cool pattern paper, because I think that it just really adds a very nice elevation to any handmade card or design that literally takes no effort or no work at all. So I found this lovely blue design with these vines and leaves on them, and I thought it would fit perfectly with the floral theme of this card. What I did again was the same thing where I wanted a white border. It's completely up to you. You can have plain paper, you can have pattern paper, you can cover the entire card with this paper, or you can leave a bit of a border like me as well. The next thing that I did was I cut a circular hole in this paper, and this is where you're going to write your message. So I decided to do a very simple circle design for this one, but you might want to do something like a heart or maybe a frilly bubble kind of thing, if you know what I mean, or a square, or whatever it is that feels like it would fit with the theme of your particular card. At this point, I stuck down the paper, and I think that I made a mistake here, which is that I immediately went on to making the flowers and sticking them on, which then meant that it was really awkward for me to come back and have to add in the written message in the middle later. So I'd recommend that you write happy birthday or whatever it is message you want to now before you start working on and sticking on the flowers. So I stuck it down, and then the next thing for us is to start working on the flowers. So this was a blue and white themed card for me, so I went for blue and white flowers. And don't worry that there's this little fold, so when I had to cut into the paper to make that circle, I folded it so I could get a nice clean circle that was the same on each side. And when I stuck it back down, it left a little crease, but don't worry, because if there's any crease or anything or any blemishes on your paper, you can just cover it with the flowers. So for the flowers, very simply, you're just going to take your coloured paper, and I'd recommend having at least 2 colours because it looks so much better. But you can always have one colour if you want a monochromatic card, or you can have multiple shades of one colour or lots of different colours. You can even add little green leaves to really spice it up if you want to go absolutely ham with the colours. Anyway, what you're going to do is take a paper which is not very thick ideally, so I'd recommend actually using printer paper if you're going to do the white flowers, because you're going to be doing a lot of folding with this paper and it's just a bit awkward if the paper is quite thick. So basically what you're going to do is fold the paper once, fold it twice, fold it 3 times. You can fold it as many times as you fold it, but I folded it about 3 times. That felt like the limit. And then there's 2 different flowers that you can make here. So you can just make a flower which has a lot of petals, or one which just has 4. So basically you want to hold the flower at the point that the paper is connected with the edge of the paper pointing outwards, and then what you're going to do is cut specifically around the edge of the paper. Otherwise, if you cut that middle bit, it's all just going to fall apart. So for a 4-pronged flower, you're going to follow the shape of the triangle and you're going to round it out at the top. I can't explain it verbally, but just watch the video. And then for a flower which has more petals, you basically just want to draw a petal shape and then cut along that. When you unfold it, it will have lots and lots of petals, and I made a mixture of 4-petal flowers and 8-petal flowers because I thought that a mixture would look the best. And I also made a mixture of sizes as well, and you can even layer the flowers on top of each other. So once you've cut out your flowers and you've unfolded them, you can make them a little bit more 3D if you want. Again, I did this with some of them and not with others, just to create that variation. But basically you want to cut a little slit, fold it over like so, and then you can glue it, and then you have a more 3D flower which sticks out. So for the glue I'm using for this whole video, I just want to point out what it was. So I was using this £1 craft glue, super cheap. It's basically like PVA glue and it's not very expensive, but you're going to need something like that for this card, so not a glue stick. When you're sticking these in, you're going to need that thick glue so that you can paint it on and you can properly stick your flowers down. So you're going to want to arrange the flowers in an aesthetic way around the white space that you have made with your text. I recommend having 2 bundles of flowers on opposite sides of the shape, one with slightly more flowers and stretching over a bigger space overall. So you've got a slightly smaller bundle on one side, a bigger on the other, and I think that makes it look more organic and interesting. So here is how I laid out my flowers. Then once I was happy with the arrangement, I just slapped down a lot of glue and then I poked the flowers into place and tried not to flatten them too much, and they dried and stuck on nicely. So with that, here is the finished version of this design. Let me know what you think of this one and if you're going to be making it. I think that it's really sophisticated looking, like very elegant and effective, but it is deceptively easy to make. The third card is not a card in the traditional sense. It doesn't open like a card. We're going to think a little bit out of the box with this one. Do you like my pun? Out of the box. Because it's a present. So yeah, this one can be any occasion that you would give someone gifts. You can make it green and red. It could be a Christmas present. You could draw little hearts on the wrapping paper and make it pink, and then it could be an anniversary or Valentine's Day card again. It's quite versatile. It's just for any occasion that you would give someone presents. So the first thing that we're going to do is get our cardstock, and we're going to fold it into a rectangle, but we want it to be like a little card, so we want it to be double-sided. I feel like I'm really bad at explaining it verbally, but you can see what I'm doing. I'm just making a mini card, so basically a mini rectangular card, and then the next thing I did was fold it over the edges on the back, and I used sellotape to tape them in place. And this is basically us just making like a little pocket. So the way that this card works is we're going to make a top for the present, so a lid, and then we're going to be able to pull the lid off and it's attached to a bit of paper with the message inside. So once you've created your little pocket, the next step is going to be to create a lid and draw a very simple little bow on top. I made my lid slightly wider than the present because I thought that would look nice, up to you. But once you've done that, you want to measure out a bit of card that is going to fit inside of your present, and you want to make sure that it's the right height so that it will sit in the present and not stick out too much. And that's what we're going to glue our lid design to and write the message on. So once we've got all this figured out and working, we can start on the design. I simply just traced over my ruler to get the ribbon down the middle of the present, and then very simply I'm just going to use my acrylic markers again, and it's just a simple 2-colour job, one for the present, one for the bow. And we also want to do the same for the lid, so the same colour palette. I actually added a bit of extra detail to the bow, which we'll see in a moment. I added a bit of shading. Depends if you want a really flat look or really detailed look. Then we want to take our little piece of paper with the message. We want to write a message on there. I wasn't really making this for anyone or any occasion in mind, so I decided to keep it open and just write something random in pencil, but write your message in, then stick the message to the lid. Make sure that you leave a blank space at the top of your message so that you have space to stick it to the lid at the top, and then very simply we just slide it in. You might need to make some adjustments and cut it a little bit just to make sure that the lid sits nicely on the present box and there's no white paper showing. So make sure the paper isn't too tall, then give it a test. It should just be a nice little present. You can pull out that message, looks like you're opening the lid to reveal the message inside. You could get more creative with this and you can make like a big long message and fold it accordion style so that when you pull off the lid, a big accordion long message comes out and unfolds. It's really up to you. You can get even more creative with this one, I think. So there it is, there's the final design, and please let me know what you thought of these designs. Would you make any of these? Are you gonna make any, and for who and what occasion? It would be really cool if I could see the cards that you guys make if you do end up following this tutorial, and if you do end up following it and you do want to show me something, then just go down to my description. It has all my socials. Maybe you can send me a photo on Instagram or something. I'd love to see if anyone did end up following any of these tutorials. Anyway, as I mentioned at the start of the video, I'm just a small illustrator YouTuber trying to make our way in this world, so if you found that this video was helpful and you actually got to the end, wow, thank you, then please I just ask, you know, it really helps the video in the algorithm if people engage with it, so liking or sharing it with someone who maybe might have some event coming up they want to make a card for, I don't know. Share it with your friends for ideas, or I always ask if people can just drop a star emoji in the comment section even if you have nothing to say, just to let me know that you watched the video, got to the end, or got some value out of it. It really helps with the algorithm, so thank you so much if you do that, and thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next video. Subscribe if you want to be there. Bye!